Hello, welcome everybody. How many of you sell to consumers, people? Okay. And then the rest of you do commercial businesses? You sell to businesses? Or a little bit of both? Hope to? Okay. All right, great. And then how many of you have existing customers now? So you've got receivables, you're billing. Okay, great. Okay, good. We're going to go over the trade credit side, the contract side, so you do this right. If you do this right when you are young, it will be a whole lot easier to build the business as you go. I've been in business for 20 years. So like Stephanie, I talk as an entrepreneur, but also an expert in trade credit, global trade credit. We work for mostly manufacturers, but companies all over the world to make sure they get paid on time, every time, for everything that they sell. So that's your goal, is to get paid on time. So for those of you who sell to consumers, the best advice I give to you is no credit. Let Visa, MasterCard, American Express take care of that. Do not get in the business of financing consumers. They're the highest risk, they're the worst payers out there, and you will get stung. It makes absolutely no sense. Think about it when you go to your dentist and you try to get out without paying the bill. They just about gang tackle you on the way out to give them some money because they do not want to be chasing you for these bills. So that's a piece of advice I have for you, those of you selling to consumers. For those of you who sell to commercial businesses, I'm going to talk about some of the myths out there that exist about doing business on credit and with and without contracts, how to get paid on time. Talk about using those contracts, why we use contracts for everything that we sell, and why you should be doing that too. Using contracts for everything that you sell. Some of the terms we've tossed out some terms about billing and in terms of sale. I'm going to tell you some of the things you can't do as commercial trade creditors that you would be by billing somebody. Also, some of the options out there for you. How to extend credit? How do we know who all the deadbeats are? We're the ones inside of companies managing that trade. So we know when somebody calls us up whether they're going to pay us on time or not. We can tell you that in 2 minutes. Whether that's going to be a customer who pays us on time, isn't going to pay us at all, or is going to take 90 days to pay us. So how do we do that? I'm going to give you some very, very concrete strategies today on how to make sure you get paid on time. And then how to collect. We don't have a lot of time, so we're just going to go straight into the first one here on the myths. I've got my myth busters out there, down at the bottom. Myth. Every customer who wants to buy from me is a good customer. Now, I know what it's like to be a startup. I was a startup 20 years ago before the internet existed. I was a startup business, and you are so excited to get those customers. It's just really exciting to have somebody call you up and say they want to buy something. But you know, who cares if you sell things to people that are companies that are never going to pay you? Anybody can do that. It's like free consulting. How many service businesses do we have? Yeah, if you haven't yet, someone's going to ask you to do something for free. And you know you've reached a certain point in your business when you turn away business because it's not good business. And I spend a lot of my day arguing with salespeople all over the world who try to convince me that a bad customer is a good customer. Usually it's because they're driving some fancy car or out on their big boat taking my sales rep out with them, and I'm saying, that's where all their money is. They don't have any money to pay us. That's the problem. So every customer is not a good customer. Billing a customer, another myth is that all you got to do is bill somebody. Send them an invoice and you'll get paid. And a lot of entrepreneurs I know, they just like drop that in the mail and they just pray to God the money comes in. You know, that's not a good way to manage that cash flow. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about billing in terms. Oh, this is one of my favorites. No worries, Pam, big companies. They're good for it. Oh, no. Some of us work in those big companies, and they will do everything in their power to pay you as slowly as possible. So they're not the good guys in this. They may be big, but a lot of them, if you look at the balance sheets out there, they're sitting on trillions of dollars. A lot of those dollars belong to small companies. So how do we get them to pay us on time? We work for small companies too. How do we get them to pay us? Contracts, I used to teach entrepreneurship. I retired from St. Thomas, taught there for 10 years in the Fast Track program, great program for learning how to grow your companies. At Fast Track, we argue over contracts. People say, I don't want to do a contract. I don't want to pay lawyers. And then what happened? Somebody wouldn't pay them, and they'd come to me, and I'd say, well, show me your contract. Well, we don't have a contract. said, well, then it's you say they owe you, they say they don't. Now we've got a problem. So I'm going to give you a sample contract here in a minute, too. And another myth is that collection work is painful. It's really pretty easy, guys. It really is. A few years ago, I had a friend of mine, I didn't know at the time, but she owned a medical device company. And she said, you know, I'm out raising money. We were raising money together. Both of us raised a few $1 million. And I said to her, Lee, you know, you've got money right here in your receivables. They sell to hospitals, right? Medical device companies. She goes, yeah, but they pay me. They take 75 days to pay. And I said, hello, what do? We are the company that makes sure you get paid on time. So I calculated, she had about $500,000. She was very small at the time, but she had about $500,000 in receivables that were completely unnecessary. I said, let's take you from 75 to 35, and I'll get you $500,000 in 60 days. No worries. I said, it'll probably cost you $2,000 or $3,000 in service. Okay, go for it. So sure enough, that's what we did. We got those hospitals to pay her on time. She generated $500,000, paid a few $1,000s to generate that $500,000 and kept that in her pocket. So when she sold that company to a big public company on the West Coast, a lot of the value of her business was in the cash flow. Not, they just sold these little tiny plastic things they stick inside of you. Cost you 20 cents to make and they sell for 500. But a lot of the value in her business is because that cash flowed like that. So very, very important to do when you're small, so you can do that as you grow. Okay, so let's talk about those contracts. I've got some samples for those of you who don't use a contract right now, especially for you service business people. You know, if you are going to sell on credit, here you go, you need a contract. Oh, sorry. If you sell for cash, you know, you go to McDonald's and you pay cash for a burger, you don't need a contract. But if you're going to sell to somebody with a promise to pay in the future, you need to have a contract, because that contract needs to say, here are the terms, here's the pricing, here's what I'm going to get paid. Very, very clear expectations. And the worst at issuing contracts are service businesses. The absolute worst. Like I said, they just kind of close their eyes and pray that the money's going to come in. Not a good strategy to get paid. So you have to have clear expectations so the customer knows. It makes it a whole lot easier to collect it. Now, if you don't have a contract, the customer's purchase order is the contract. And I have these dopey customers, clients, who get contracts in, purchase orders in, by fax, email, EDI, and nobody looks at it. So when the customer puts net 120 days on it, guess what the terms are without a contract? Net 120 days. So someone needs to look at those POs and say, oh, here are the terms, here are the pricing, and if they write net 90 days on those contracts, we just cross them off, and we put 30, and we fax it back, and now the contract is 30 days. So if we don't have credit applications, which I've also got samples for you, you need to have a contract, because the probability of you getting paid in full, the probability is greatly diminished if you do not have a contract. So I'm hoping all of you, if you don't have it yet, are going to get contracts in after this. And if you want this emailed to you so you can edit it, just send me an email to my emails at the end. Oh, that's my speech on contracts. Okay, billing. Just as was said earlier, you need to bill as often as possible. You know, shipping, bill. There's no reason to wait till the end of the week or the end of the month to issue invoices. If you are a service business, as I am going to bill at least every 2 weeks. Why? Because I have payroll every 2 weeks. And my people like to get paid, you know, funny as that is. And the only way for me to get paid is to bill. So why would I wait until the end of the month and then bill my clients, and worse, give them 30 days to pay me? Now, all of a sudden, I'm financing Target and Walmart and all these people. It's ridiculous. I need to make those terms very, very short, and I need to make sure I'm billing all of the time. So for me, I bill every 2 weeks because that's my payroll. And I bill every other Friday, and I have 90% of my receivables by the next Friday. Now, of course, people are a little leery about not paying me on time. I'm their credit manager. I'm expected to get them paid on time, so I get paid on time. But my terms are my favorite terms, due upon receipt. I send the invoice to accounts payable. You should send every invoice to accounts payable. I don't care if you work with Joe over in marketing. Send Joe a copy of the invoice if you want him to see it. But if you don't get it to payables, it doesn't get scheduled. Nobody's looking at it to say, I've got to pay this next week or in a couple of weeks. So send it to accounts payable, like someone said, to put the due date on it, make sure that you've got that contact in there, and shorten your terms. Due upon receipt, service businesses. Net 10, net 7. 30 days is a manufacturing term. It really means I'm going to give someone a chance to make something else with this, sell it to their customer, get paid, and pay me. If you're a service business, what the heck? You just did the service. You should be paid. So think about whether you want to finance your clients or whether you should be able to turn this cash very, very quickly. Another thing I put up here is the third. Consultants, bless their hearts. I used to be a consultant when I first started out. They'll go in and they might have a contract and all, but they'll go in and they'll do all this work and they won't bill till the end. And what happens when you give a client a big fat invoice at the end? They find all kinds of reasons why they can't pay you. So we never go into a deal that says, oh, well, we'll bill you at the end of the project. No. We'll get a third down when the contract is signed. Then we'll get a third down halfway through with certain deliverables. And then at the very end, we'll bill the last third. If you can do this half-half, that's good too. The last third, and it's due upon receipt. You need to be very clear about this. Do not be wishy-washy on your terms. Okay, the squeaky wheel definitely gets the grease. We'll talk about collecting in a few minutes, but don't be shy about getting paid. You've provided them the product or the service. It's their job to pay you. That's just contract fulfillment. It's not because you're mean that you have to make the call, and I get these Minnesotans who call like this and say, yeah, I know that you have to pay. No, we need to be very clear about when these invoices are due. So very, very short terms. Cash discounts if you can afford it. We always do cash discount studies. If you have got large margins, service margins, maybe 20% or more, cash discounts make a lot of sense. I'll give you a 2% discount if you pay me in 10 days. But you don't let them go 15, 20, 30 because then you may as well have net terms. So service charging works if you're in an industry that service charges. If you're a service business, like an accountant or a lawyer or something, you can do service charging, but you have to service charge everybody. Every light customer has to be serviced. You can't pick and choose. You can't say, well, I'm going to service charge that guy, but not this guy. No. You have antitrust laws that govern how you service charge customers. You have to service charge everybody in a like category. So if you have retailers, you can service charge them and not your manufacturers, but you can't pick and choose which customers you want to service charge. And that's what you have to treat all like customers alike. Unless you only do business in the state of Minnesota, or if you're in Wisconsin, in the state of Wisconsin, you have to adhere to antitrust laws. You can't just pick and choose. That's true for pricing, terms, service charges, all that good stuff. You don't want to get audited on that. Minimum, I think the minimum fee for violating that act is $250,000. So it's not a good one to screw them. Okay, Pat. It's not working here. It doesn't discriminate, but... Okay, I'm just going to keep on talking. Well, how do you know? Oh, there we go. Okay, I kind of like that. Making them run up here. Okay, credit. So, how do we know who's going to pay us, right? I've got to predict these all day long. I get applications and I have to know who's going to pay us. Okay, I told you already, don't give any credit to consumers. They're absolutely lousy. Don't give credit to political groups. That's coming up, right? You got a big election next year. Don't be stupid and give credit to them. Because you see that they run out of cash. And guess what? You're not going to get paid for all your fabulous signs and everything. Don't give them any credit. Okay, credit cards, ACH. You know, if people pay monthly fees to you, take it out of their checking accounts. Don't bill these tiny little invoices. You shouldn't be billing things for $50 or $60. It's costing you that much money to issue an invoice, okay? It should be hundreds, thousands of dollars. So be very, very careful about that. You're going to get mired in all these costs that you don't need. Every customer who wants to buy in credit from you should complete a credit application. This is a sample credit application. Again, that you really want customers to be able to use, unless you're a service business, you can write it into the contract, these terms. But I'll tell you why we do these credit applications, which I just gave out all of them, so I don't have one in front of me. But, no, that's okay, thank you. Because the credit application is going to give you the ability to check credit on somebody, get the banking information, right? I send these over to you guys send these back to me. I don't check trade references because who are you going to put on as your trade reference? If someone asks you for references, your brother-in-law, your cousin, you're going to say, hey, can you give me a good reference when they send these out? No. We don't do that stuff. We might ask for it because we might know a credit manager you buy from, but I'm not going to check trade references. I'm going to tell you what we do in a minute. But I want this because you'll see it on the bottom of here. First of all, this does not follow the same rules as consumers. We can write this as tiny as we want to because we don't want you to read it. We just want you to sign it. Okay, and it says, I'm giving you the authority to check these references. But it's also saying if you buy from me in California and you default, you try to not pay me, then I'm going to go here in Ramsey County and get a judgment against you and just transfer it. I'm not going to come out to you. I'm going to get a judgment here in Ramsey County. So its jurisdiction is here wherever I am located. So we do that. Minnesota is a very good creditor-friendly state. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to put my service charges in here. I'm going to say I have the right, even if I don't do it, I'm going to say I have the right to charge maximum by law, which is usually 18%. I'm going to put that in there because you can't collect service charges without getting written permission to be able to collect them. It's not legal to do that. So you got to have somebody say, yeah, go ahead and service charge me. See why the lettering is so small? And old people like me have to go, what? What does this say? You have to have that non-discrimination clause in there. That's also a federal law, is required. But this is a good sample credit application. Again, I have this in a PDF or in a Word document that you can customize. Put your cute little logo at the top and all that. Just email me and I'll send it to you. If you want to be able to use this credit application, again, if you're selling products especially, on credit, every customer gets credit applied. Can you imagine going to Target and just filling up your cart and walking past the checkout person and saying, just send me an invoice? Companies do this all the time. I get an invoice and I say, Pam, I can't get paid from this guy. It'll say Joe. And it gives his cell phone. Who's Joe? How am I supposed to collect this? But that's about what they're doing. And we don't call it a credit application. We call it a customer profile. It sounds so nice. Just fill this out so I can get it in my computer. So, because they'll go, application. I'm not going to apply for credit with a little company like yours. You say, oh no, we have to have this filled out for the computer. So, in our world, it's called a customer profile. It just sounds so nice. Okay, so we get that signed. Now we're going to figure out who to sell on credit. Public companies. Boy, nice word in there. I put that some small, some big. Okay, public companies are not good for it. Okay? You can't just know a company name and say, no, they're good for it. Because they're not. They're all over the place. From fabulous, pays everything on time, to going to go under tomorrow. We just had another big public company go under today, Dynegy, I think out of Houston. These energy companies just come and go. But you have to really, if you are not a financial expert like Stephanie, and you can't study a financial statement and figure out the risk of default like my analysts, I'm just going to give you a real simple thing here to look at. If you see stock prices under $10, be concerned. If you see them under $3, then you should know that the risk of default is most likely very, very high. And if you want to see how close they are to filing bankruptcy, look at the cash flow from operations. Go on Yahoo Finance, yahoo.com/finance, and look at their stock and look at cash flow from operations. If it's negative, they're not generating any cash. So they're just floating above the surface, and it could happen any day that they go under. So cash flow from operations, just as we spent all afternoon talking about, is what you're going to care about if you're going to sell to these companies on credit. Okay, that's a public company. All right, most of the work we do is selling to private companies. Well, how do you know so much about private companies, Pam? Well, thank you for asking. We know because there's a lot of information available. Out on the internet. If you're getting orders for $500, $1,000, $5,000, okay, little orders like that, find out who the deadbeats are. Okay, know who just filed bankruptcy yesterday. Know who's having tax problems. I put a service out here, nox.com. knowx.com, you can pay to do public record searches. You can put anybody's name in there, any company's name in there, check bankruptcies, liens, and judgments for $25 and know who's not been paid by them,